What up, guys? Reefer here, back with another episode. I got some more information from the pot book covering uh, the use of cannabis in cases with multiple sclerosis. I'm going to start off at the bottom of the. Let me have another one. So, it's very important that we learn about the many benefits of cannabis as medicine. It is undeniable proof that we have been using it as medicine for thousands of years. And we are just awakening now to how many disorders and problems it can help us with. So we need to spread this information because recently I've met a few people on Twitter and I know a few people in my life that suffer from MS. And it's a very, very debilitating problem. So, and I'd rather have those people on pot over pills because pills can make that condition even worse. It can wreak hell upon your life. The addiction to the pain pills is insane. So we need to be educated on its benefits. This chapter is provided as a guide for patients with MS, multiple sclerosis, considering cannabis as a treatment in the cases where conventional medicinal management has failed. Particular attention is directed to the individual symptoms of their response to cannabis based on published scientific research. Since symptom severity and disability can highly variable, no simple recommendation concerning cannabis use can be made in isolation from the specifics of an individual patient. Multiple sclerosis is the most common cause for chronic neurological disability in young adults and is more likely seen in women and in those who grew up in northern latitudes. In the United States, an estimated 350,000 people are affected. Worldwide, more than 1 million people have the diagnosis of MS. As a chronic nervous system disorder, MS is a progressive illness in which the body breaks down its own myelin, the protective sheath of neurons that allows more effective neurotransmission. It is treated with drugs intended to alter clinical progression of the ongoing assault on central nervous system myelin. These drugs are designed to decrease symptoms such as pain management, muscle spasms, weakness, and other functional disabilities. Cannabis has been used to treat some symptoms of MS. It is the intent of this chapter to provide some guidance for patients considering using this treatment. While the medical literature documents have collected observations of physicians and patients throughout the ages, nothing surpasses the impact of personal observation of a clinical response in an individual patient. For this author, seeing my patients in a neurology clinic on the wards in the 1970s, respond to cannabis piqued my interest in its therapeutic potential. A 27-year-old man was referred for evaluation and treatment of his severe spasticity. In addition to weakness and fatigue in his legs, he experienced frequent severe nocturnal leg spasms while resting in bed. His symptoms were not improved by conventional medications, including muscle relaxants. As a suggestion of a friend, the patient tried cannabis with immediate beneficial effects. When asked to refrain from cannabis use for the 6 weeks between clinical visits, he returned with more prominent spasticity in legs, leg pain, and uncontrolled muscle spasms. In addition, he now complained of several episodes of urinary incontinence. At this instance of the patient, he left the clinic and returned 1 hour later. On his return, the findings of examination of the nervous system were remarkable, with normal deep tendon flexes and negative Babinski sign, or reflect associated with impairment of CNS motor function. The patient admitted to smoking in the interval between examinations since cannabis provided much better control of symptoms when compared to conventional drugs. The patient continued his pattern of therapeutic cannabis use for control of his spasticity without adverse effects. This single patient observation provided the rationale for the first clinical trial of cannabinoid drug delta-9 THC in the scientific literature. Recognizing that current MS treatment is less than optimal, the current use of cannabis offers the opportunity to demonstrate the therapeutic potential of cannabinoids on a number of neurological symptoms. In a survey of 471 people with MS in the United Kingdom, use of cannabis was acknowledged by 8%. Based on the MS incident in the United States, one can estimate as many as 28,000 MS patients in the United States may be using cannabis at any one time. A representative example of cannabis use in South Africa reported the experience of a female patient. A few years ago, I started to eat small quantities of marijuana. The effects were immediate and remarkable. Control of bladder functioning, which was a humiliating problem, is restored to normal and has been liberating, influencing in my lifestyle. I can now go out shopping, to the theater, and various other places without anticipation of dread or panic. Painful and disturbing attacks of spasticity are relieved, and now restful patterns of sleep are now ensured, when previous sleep was disturbed by urinary infrequency or pain and discomfort. Not least, I can laugh and giggle, have marvelous sex, and forget that I have this awful, incurable, intractable disease. Now, if you mentioned in another video that I made called de-habituation, this is also where cannabis helps. Not just the pain, but it gives them a positivity about their problem, and that can greatly affect their healing process when they have strong mental. The challenge for physicians is to evaluate patient observations using scientific methodology. Beginning with the first publication of the beneficial effects by Petro, researching with cannabis in MS now includes over 24 studies evaluating safety and efficiency. Since the cannabis plant contains at least 60 cannabinoid compounds, the scientific literature must be evaluated carefully due to the variable in absorption and metabolism of individual cannabinoids. In addition to extensive human trials, research involving animal model of MS has demonstrated the site of action of cannabis at the receptor sites in the brain, thus strengthening the rationale for use of cannabis in the treatment of MS. In the period from 1988 to 2006, more than 100 peer-reviewed scientific articles on cannabis and MS were published. Yet on April 20th, 2006, the FDA said that no sound scientific studies supported the medical use of marijuana. Bullshit. This was despite the overwhelming body of peer-reviewed research in support of the therapeutic effects of marijuana in conditions such as chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, AIDS wasting syndrome, neuropathic pain, and spasticity. The challenge for patients with MS is to assess the information presented in the media with attention to two basic questions. Is cannabis effective, and is it safe? That's two obvious answers for me. I'm going to take a bong rip. Using my Bing by Halo RX glass, by the way. I'm loving it. Treatment options, disease modification, and symptom management. In patients with MS, disease activity can be modified by appropriate drug therapy. Management of an acute episode of demyelination is sometimes achieved to a limited extent with corticosteroids. Disease modification is difficult to assess because the MS is a chronic, unpredictable disorder in which the burden of white matter involvement is highly variable. The clinical response to any drug treatment may be modest at best. 6 drugs have been approved to modify the clinical course of MS, and I'll post the link right here because they're kind of complicated. In addition, immunosuppressants such as corticosteroids, methotrexate, and another drug, I'll post the link, have been used to alter the natural history of MS with some success. Cannabis treatment with disease modification. While patients may claim that cannabis can't alter the natural history of MS, no prospective clinical trials have been conducted to prove this. Data from animal research supports that cannabis as a possible disease-modifying therapy. The immune-mediated disease created by scientists, AEA, is considered an animal model of MS. Lyman and colleagues demonstrated that the oral administration of delta-9 THC was effective in the prevention and suppression of AEA. This research suggests that delta-9 THC might prove to be a new and relatively innocuous agent for the treatment of MS. In the animal study, cannabinoids have been shown to be neuroprotective for toxin insults, as well as in the EAE animal model. In the clinical trial of Zajic, why do these guys have to have just confusing names, and colleagues, in patients with MS, exacerbation rates were lower in cannabinoid treatment patients compared with placebo. This observation is consistent with preclinical observations of the neuroprotective effects of cannabis. It remains remarkable that cannabis may slow neurodegeneration, which ultimately causes chronic disability in MS, yet no clinical trials are underway to test this hypothesis. Now, there's a few other chapters on this, and I'll post another link, a part 2 of this video. So I hope you enjoyed the first part of this information, and make sure to check the next one. Alright? Peace out, guys.